Stephen, everyone give a big round of applause for Stephen Page.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I'm not a billionaire.
That's fine.
As you can see, a lot older than 52, sadly, but I think Chris's point about time is the most important issue. It's so valuable, you know, particularly if you've got it ahead of you. Very important to use it.
Well, you have a lot of time
behind
you, and you've got a lot of experience, and honestly, you are...
Sorry,
but it's true.
No, I'm hoping there's still quite a bit
and time
ahead
for
of me
you
as well.
But Stephen, honestly, you are a huge role model of mine. You used to be an entrepreneur, you used to be an accountant, you went into angel investing, you started an angel group, which is now SFC, and it's Europe's most active fund, is that right? SEIS fund?
Yes, yeah.
You've done so much, and it's been incredible to see your journey. And just for everybody in the room and for me, I'm super intrigued to hear your kind of story, the key highlights. Let's talk about all of it, and let's get into what you learned.
Yeah, okay. So
Start
if we
from
go
the beginning.
way back.
Go way back.
Way back. So as you say, I was originally an accountant. Found that very boring, to be honest, although, you know, it's been very useful to have those disciplines that I learned from being an accountant. And very early on, I think it was 1970-something, late 70s, I got in with another accountant, and we started a company when, right at the beginning of the PC revolution, as it was called. So just even before the IBM PC came out, even before Microsoft, all that. So, and then we started the company. We dabbled here, dabbled there, didn't get anywhere for a few years, actually, until mid-80s, some early, 83, 84. And we actually then, we were a software company. That was the idea. I didn't know much about software, but we got into it. And we came across an American, I went out to an event in Atlanta, and there was a brand new product called DataEase that was launched, which was a relational database management system, which, again, you know, what the hell was that? I wasn't sure, but it looked very good. So we actually became the distributor for it in UK. And very quickly, it took off, because the first lesson that we learned very quickly was to have good people. And somehow I came across some good people, a good sales manager, a good marketing manager, a good salespeople. And it really took off in the 80s. And by the end of the 80s, we went from, you know, zero in 84. By the end of the 80s, we were up to £20 million revenue, which is a lot more now, you know, now than it was then. And but we then merged with the American company, and I was the CEO throughout this. I went to live in America, but then we made a fatal mistake. And this fatal mistake was, by then we were probably 300 to 400 people. We had a very good global market, actually, and doing 40, 50 million a year revenue. And we were approached by a company called Lotus, which became Lotus Development. They had a product called 123, Lotus Notes, and they offered to buy us. And because we had such a complex cap table full of all sorts of VCs from America and Britain, we couldn't agree to accept the deal. So we walked away from it. It was about 60 million, 1990, you know, wow. A lot of money. And that was the fatal mistake. Because in the wings, and this is another big lesson for entrepreneurs, in the wings was a company coming out with some new software which would become our rival, and it was Microsoft.
Wow.
So after by 93, 94, no one was interested in buying us, I can tell you, when Microsoft is the competition. And they were giving away the equivalent software for free, pretty much, in their Office suite. So we got up to about 45 million or whatever, and then we started the slow descent. And unfortunately that took, well, fortunately and unfortunately, that took the best part of 15 to 20 years to decline. by the end of it, 2012, let's say, I was the last man standing.
Wow.
I had to fire 300 or 400 people in that decline and keep the company going, because we always believed round the corner we would make it again.
Yeah.
We took on some more software, blah, 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 but people really were not. We had a little boom in 1999 because of Year 2K, fantastic. That was all bullshit, as we know. But we made a lot of money from fear-mongering.
Yeah.
We also had a bit of a boom from, so we lost that exit, but I did get an exit, which was a small one, but it was to do with 9/11. And with 9/11, the coroner's office in New York they were using our software. They needed to redevelop it in those days, they really believed there was going to be a series of attacks. It wasn't just a one-off.
Yeah.
So we were called in the day after 9/11. I was in New York, actually, for 9/11, unfortunately. But the day after, we were called in, and they asked us to redevelop the application we had there so it would handle all sorts of emergency stuff. The application actually tracked a dead body from when they found it right through to the death certificate. Now we had to redevelop it. Cut a long story short, that was a 9-year contract for us,
Wow.
which was, out of adversity came a very nice little business. And we sold that to an Indian company, subsidiary of Moody's, in 2009. So by that time, after Boink, selling that bit of business, which was okay, and then that's when we get to 2012.
Okay, and that's when you start SFC.
So
What made you want to start that group,
Well,
and what
yeah.
were the kind of, because you had quite an early success, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I was, to be honest, I wasn't very comfortable when all that, after the end of that. It had been quite a journey, quite a painful
Quite a rough
journey.
ride. Yeah.
Rough ride, yeah, it was really. So I was wondering, what on earth am I going to do? I was not quite a billionaire even then, but in terms of age, but so I was a bit older than that, but not that much older. And so I thought, well, I've still got good years ahead. What should I do? And so I do know about startups, I do know about building companies a little bit, and entrepreneurs. So why don't I help some companies? And that's how it came about. I had some friends who were angels, and in inverted commas, they were sort of mentoring some companies and things. So we put together a little angel group, syndicate, and we called it Startup Funding Club. And so that was the first name of SFC. And we started off by doing presentations at a club called Home House. That was what we were doing, and it was, private individuals were investing in anything they liked. The quality of the presentation then was pretty poor, but in amongst all that, I'd been up to Oxford to do a bit of hunting for, people said, go to the universities and see if you can find some good companies. So I went up to Oxford and I came across this young lad who was 23-year-old, Hussein, and he'd started a company that was pre-funding at that stage, and it was very, very raw, as you can imagine, but it was obvious he was special. So, cut a long story short, I said, we had a little office in London, come down to our office, base yourself there, we will see if we can get some funding for you. So we pitched them at this club, Home House, in our event, and one angel investor said, this was just as SEIS had started, by the way. So SEIS had come out 2013. Let's see if we can get an SEIS round. No one knew what it was, really. It was brand new. I mean, anyone who thought it was a very new thing. So let's see if we can get some funding for this company, which was subsequently called Onfido, but then was called something else. Verify checks or something. Very exciting. And so this investor who was there, offered 100,000 at a 600,000 valuation. So he would have got like a big chunk. And then he, after 3 months of in-depth analysis, blah, 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 he came to the office one morning, and I had Hussein there. We were about to close the deal. And he said, you know, Stephen, I'm really not so sure about this. I said, well, why? He said, well, I was in the pub last night and my friend said, are you sure you should be backing a company that is doing background checking on individuals? It's very unethical. And so this guy said, and I can't in all conscience invest, I'm sorry. It was unbelievable. This fantastic company, ready to invest, he would have got, I don't even want to say how much he would have made out of that. Well, I know it would have been a lot. So, and it took us another couple of months to find another investor from the same group, actually, at Home House. And he did come in with 60,000. Mm-hmm. I came in with the tiny, you know, it's my biggest regret, of course, how much I put in, but it was still enough to do very nicely. So we then backed that company. They came to our office, and then that company really took off. And one of the great things about that company and the great lessons was how they pivoted, because they were really successful in background checking, and they really took on the gig. It was the gig economy was taking off at the time. Companies like Airbnb, Uber, had all were starting, and so they were their main clients, HouseGo or whatever it was, the cleaning company and things like that, because they were doing background checking on all these people. Mm. But then, after a few years, it was starting to steady out. They'd had a lot of VC backing by then, and they really, almost overnight, pivoted to facial recognition, which is quite some pivot in many ways. There are links, but it was a brilliant piece of pivoting, and they then exited last year on the back of the facial recognition
so you
for
invested
600 plus million.
Wow. So you invested at 600,000 valuation?
Yeah, and he exited at 600 million plus. You know,
that's pretty cool.
That's what we all, as Chris was saying, that's what we're all looking for. That's what everyone wants to, you know, to get. Very difficult.
Earlier you said that you could tell that he was special when you first met him. What is it about him that you...
He was, well, and I think, and still, actually, he is the same. Very talented, very smart. He got an MBA at Oxford, so you know he's smart. For a start, you don't have to check it out really. And he had two colleagues who were with him, so there was a trio, and they were complementary skills. So he was the sort of leader, the CEO, very salesy type. Then he had a CTO and a chief operating officer, all from Oxford, all knew each other for a number of years. So that was a key attribute. They knew each other. They knew about the foibles, how they all, you know, they got on very well. They were all from Oxford, so therefore very capable. But Hussein in particular had this humility. And, you know, if anyone ever asked me about one word to describe the best founders, apart from one or two, you know, as we know them, of course, in the press, but in general, it's humility, actually. Those that are willing to take advice. I remember in the early board meetings of Onfido, you know, I was on the board, he was on the board, and the other two. And so, but when we'd attend a board meeting, I'd say, why are there 10 people here? Oh, I've got all sorts of advisors attending. And I said, fantastic, let's get them attending. And so he really was a sponge to get advice from all sorts of different people, and always thanked those people and gave those people, you know, some shares, and, you know, it was total profile for me of a successful entrepreneur is that humility.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you've now made over 500 investments, is that right? Through SFC individually. Yes. Are you able to break down some of those numbers, like how many have done well, how many have... Yeah,
I've got some numbers written down here somewhere. You know, it's very similar to Chris's, actually.
Okay.
In a way, you know, I think there's a theme here.
Great.
You know, I mean, we've now done. So we're an SEIS fund primarily. We do have an EIS fund as well. So just to put it into context,
you're investing exactly where angels will be investing.
So we're investing right pre-seed, very early, and again, listening to Chris about the time it takes these companies. You know, it is definitely a 7 to 10 year horizon, particularly if you get in at the SEIS. Onfido was year 11 when they exited, right? So anyone who says this is a 3 to 5 year, or it's very, very rare, that. It really is. So it is a 7 to 10 plus years. And out of our 550 companies, either failed or what we call under watch, which we think is, most likely we know where they're going, is 35% so far. And 65% are either exited or on track or overperforming. So it's, and that's roughly what we would expect, really. We've had 28 exit events. That's not including Onfido, because Onfido actually, sadly, was not a fund investment, that was a personal one. But with the fund, it's an SEIS fund, and as I say, an EIS fund, but the SEIS fund has had 28 exit events out of 550, so that's 5% or something. But again, I do emphasise that a lot of those companies we really ramped up. COVID was a real turning point, and so was the increase in the SEIS allowance, that enabled much more investment to be done in the last 5 years. So we don't know yet a lot about the last 5 years. But to break it down across sectors, and we actually don't classify AI as a sector, because we think now that AI is pretty much, should be everything, right? So, but if we look at, roughly speaking, we've got, over the last 250 companies, we've got B2B 35%, green 25%, life sciences 17%, fintech 10%, which I was a bit surprised that that's not higher, but FCMG 8%. We've got some great consumer companies, actually.
This is the percentage of those in the fund, or
Of
the
the
ones that have done well?
250. So of the 250 that we've invested in the last 3 years, so we're doing about 100 a year now. So the last 3 years is about 250. Analysing those, which I think is more relevant than going way back, is what I said. B2B is the most, B2B software, green, life sciences, fintech, fast-moving goods, drinks and and so on. Hardware and robotics, 5%. So that's the breakdown. 50% regional, 50% London.
Okay.
So we're very pleased with that, because we've got our friends here from British Business Investments, who's been a fantastic investor in startups in the UK over the last few years. And so half of our companies are regional.
Amazing.
30%, I'm very proud of this one, and you'll like this one. 30% have a female founder.
Fantastic.
Which is higher than the average.
It is.
And it needs to go up, definitely. So I think those are some stats there.
And Stephen, over this time, you must have developed a system, right? Because what we know is that the more deal flow you look at, obviously, the more choice you have, but then also it gets really complicated to be able to analyse all of these different companies and still spot the right people. And you mentioned earlier that investing in Onfido, it was a lot about the founder, right? So how do you guys evaluate all of these deals and still focus on evaluating the founder?
Yeah, so over the period, as we've got better, I would say we were pretty awful in the early days, apart from Onfido, to be blunt. We've got better. And over that period, we've used the experience. There's 15 people full-time in SFC, so we've got a good team now. And we've used that to put a scoring system together. So when we get applications for funding, for SEIS funding, they fill out a very detailed questionnaire. And the first thing we do is analyse that against certain criteria and give them a score. And if they score more than 30 out of 60, so our total score is 60, if they score 30, then they get through to the next round.
Okay. And so with the angels in the room, they're obviously not going to have a whole team of people helping them. If you were to pull out maybe 3 of the key things that are in that help you get a high score, what are those 3 things? Well,
it's people, the background of the people. Have they worked together? The things that we learned from companies like Onfido. How long have they failed before? We love that, if they've failed before. You can tell, we do psychometric testing on them.
Okay.
So we're looking, in a team, for example, my favourite team is still the Onfido one, in that sense, that you want that person, if you do a DISC psychometric test, the CEO needs to be very salesy, very, go-getter. That's a big D and a big I, if you're DISC. And you want your operations, if there's a sort of operational type, they want to be S and C. So you do a blend of the psychometric test.
Okay.
If you get a blend of it, you know you've got a really good team, particularly if they've known each other for a while. So people is 20 out of the 60. Because it's SEIS, and actually we do have two systems, one SEIS, one EIS. People drops a little bit in the EIS, 1 to 16 out of 20, out of 60. Traction goes up, we want more traction at EIS. When they're SEIS, your traction is going to be very small, obviously. Most of the companies we invest in are pre-revenue. But if they've got revenue, they score well. The market and the exit potential and IP is all, we score all that. So what market are they in? Is it something that could exit, as Chris said, go big? Everyone's looking for those. So is it an exit? Is it a market that could go big? The other thing we really like, of course, is other funding. So we love if an angel brings a deal to us. So SEIS is 250. So let's say angel or angels are going to put in 50. We love that. We'll do the balance of the 200. And then we'll add on top of that BBI money and so on. So the round becomes gives them much more chance to get through the first year, to be honest. We're looking for that first year, that they can survive the first year. And then the final thing that balances the marks is valuation. And actually, we have a system where to get to 30, if their valuation is too high and they get to 20, that will push them over the 30 if the valuation is sensible.
Okay.
So that's a balancing act, which is a big subject. I'm sure you'll cover that somewhere today. And we get extra points for female, extra points for BAME, extra points for regional. That's how it all comes about, and that's how they get through to the more serious round of them being evaluated much better.
And then let's talk a bit more about evaluating the founder, because with Onfido, obviously, they were, as you said, he was 23, right? So really young founders. And often as angels, when we are evaluating founders, it's a common conversation that, founders don't have enough experience because they're quite young. What's your kind of take on that from all the people that you've seen? So taking it away from that story and just all the founders you've seen, how much does that experience level really play into it?
It, of course, is very difficult to evaluate a company's founders when that company has not had any previous funding, it's a new startup. At the EIS level, it's a bit easier, I'll be honest, because but we only invest EIS into our SEIS companies.
Yeah.
So we do 20 or 25 of those a year. So we know the history of that SEIS company. Did they report on time? Did they put in place corporate governance and have an NED on the board and realise it's no longer their company totally, and behave properly? So you see all that at the EIS level. At the SEIS level, you don't. So you have to go a little bit on the psychometric test. You have to go a bit on how they behave, how they respond. Yeah. So when they're talking to you about the investment and they're doing due diligence, are they coming back quickly? Are they showing interest? Are they negotiating? You want them to negotiate.
That's by far where you learn the most about people, isn't it? How they respond.
Absolutely. And then you also try and get a little bit about them if you can, because not just humility, but resilience is the other big thing, as we all know, is crucial, absolutely crucial. If they aren't going to be strong, if they're going to give up, then it will never work, however good they are.
Yeah. And what's from everything that you've seen, to date, but also looking forward, what's your kind of areas that you would bet on for the next 3, 5, or let's take the angel timeline, 7 years? What would you bet on? What are the key areas?
Well, I think, it's obvious, anything to do with AI, but as I said earlier, AI is everything anyway. With my background, I look at, over the years, you've had, in software and B2B software and so on, you had the local area network, then you had the internet, then you had the client server applications, then you had the cloud, and now you've got AI. Throughout that period, the applications that are in use out there they get redeveloped generally, or they get stuck in the past with companies and they don't move on. So most applications are going to be redeveloped in AI. So, office applications, whatever it might be, are going to be changed through AI. And so it's every whatever period of time, this happens. And that's why it's never out of favour that new startups and so on, because they're always redeveloping applications that have been in use since day one. Functionality and the actual application is going to be similar.
Yeah.
But now taking advantage of AI. So that's one. And the second one is longevity, which is a particular favourite of mine.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that it's going to bring all sorts of things. And longevity is very, very interesting. What things are happening there? Absolutely. Diagnostic tools.
Have you invested in any interesting things?
We have
recently?
done a few things. Yeah.
Can you share one?
Well, we've watches that.
The watches, yeah.
Basically telling you everything now.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
We invested 2 of those in the last 3 months. Already the one I got an Apple, and that's not doing as much as these. So, and the whole world of health and welfare and that's a big, massive area that everyone wants, actually. So the whole longevity subject is really not just longevity, but also living better.
Yes. Fantastic, Stephen. And just to leave everybody with some of the key things that they should do as angels. So a lot of people in this room, well, probably everybody in this room, wants to have that success like Onvido and wants to build a portfolio that gives them a return both financially and in meaning as well. What would be your kind of key takeaway? What would you tell them that they would need to go away with?
Well, I have to say, I think the toughest job in the world is to be an entrepreneur. And, we think as investors, we get quite irate sometimes with some of the entrepreneurs, But, my God, it's difficult. And I can speak from my own experience. It's very difficult. You cannot plan, because how can you plan? You don't know what's around the corner. All business plans are rubbish. They're absolutely not going to happen. They're all, as we know, hockey sticks or whatever they are. They don't happen. So you're really looking for the entrepreneurs that are tough and are resilient and can pivot and are not tied down. This is not tied down by big mortgages and so on. We check that out as well. You don't want someone who's going to need 100,000 a year. So one of our checks is, what salary do you need for the first few years? You can't. So you have to do all this because people are driven by their lives. And so you are looking for, most entrepreneurs who succeed are a little bit quirky, really, in my experience. So that's what you're looking for. And the final thing, I echo what Chris says about numbers game. It is absolutely a numbers game. You cannot just invest in 5 startups and think that you're going to get a winner. Because you might, and that would be fantastic and well done and good luck. But you have to invest in 50, 20, 30, 40, 50 before you can really get... It is a numbers game. No one knows what's going to happen. Big black swans come zooping from the sky, like COVID, like Ukraine, like what's happening with the military now, and lots of opportunities come out of all that, but also total distractions to... We had a lot of companies go down in COVID that were good companies because of, people weren't going out and hospitality and all that. So nothing is straightforward. That's
Nothing's certain, is it?
Nothing's certain. It's all the lap of the gods.
Yeah, amazing. So we're looking for humility, resilience, and a bit of quirk in our families.
Yeah, quirk is important. But not insanity.
Yeah, it's a fine line.
There are some of those, so you have to get away from them quickly. It's not advisable to be near them.
Stephen, thank you so much.